Marcia, can you hear us okay? Marcia, can you hear us okay? Marcia, can you hear us okay? I can't hear you, but it could just be because everybody else is in the room. You want to try again?
Hello? Can you speak to me, Sandy?
I can't hear you. Hold on. Okay, Marcia, I'm just asking you to unmute again. Let's see if we can get that to work. If you can unmute again and go ahead and say something. Go ahead.
This is me.
I could hear that a little bit. Just keep going.
Keep going. You mean keep talking or keep
Okay.
talking louder?
That I could hear. Let me turn up the speaker. Hold on one moment.
Okay. I don't have anything to turn up.
All right, Marcia, try it again. Go ahead and say something.
One of the nails screw is lost.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, Shakita can hear you. I bet once things quiet down, we'll be able to hear you. All right, perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Are we good? Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the City Council regular session, August 13th, 2024. I would like to call it to order, and this live stream meeting can be viewed at the city's YouTube channel, also at longmontpublicmedia.org/watch, or on Comcast channels 8 or 880. Can we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Mayor Peck,
Here.
Councilmember Christ. Here. Councilmember Hidalgo Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Councilmember McCoy. Councilmember Rodriguez. Councilmember Yarbrough. Here. Mayor, you have a quorum?
As a reminder to the public, in accordance with the council's rules of procedure, the rules for providing public comment are only Longmont residents and employees of the city of Longmont may speak during the first call, public invited to be heard, and you must provide your address and name on the sign-up sheet before the meeting. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Anyone may speak on second reading or public hearing items, and you are asked to add your name to the speaker list for that specific item before the meeting. Anyone may speak during final call, public invited to be heard. Members of the audience shall refrain from disruptive, vulgar, or abusive language, applause, heckling, or other actions that interfere with the orderly function of this council. I see a lot of you have come to sign up to speak at public invited to be heard. The council will not be accepting public comments on the Modern West 2 annexation during tonight's meeting. A public hearing is set for August the 27th, at which time public comments will be included in the record. If you're present to speak on this issue, please note that your name will not be called tonight. Can I have a motion to approve the July 23rd, 2024 regular session meeting minutes?
Accept the July 23rd regular session meeting as minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor McCoy and seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring to approve the July 23rd meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Or you could verbalize it
Down here.
board for you, Councilmember.
At the Google. No,
Oh, you're not signed in, that's why. I'm a yay.
Okay, that passes 6-0 with Councilor Rodriguez absent. We are now at the agenda revisions and submissions of documents. Do any councilors have documents or things they want to put on future agendas?
Do you have one?
I want to make,
Okay.
I do, but I wanted to make sure.
Mayor, could I introduce agenda revisions quickly
Please
before
do.
we do motions?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, as noted on the agenda, that yesterday at 5 p.m., we amended the titles of items 9E and 9F, which are both the election items, to include the words "of a" before the word "sent," so 2/10 of a cent. 9E is ordinance 2024-57, and 9F is resolution 2024-49, and we'll read those titles into the record correctly when we get to consent agenda.
Okay.
Also, item 12A, we added additional comments received yesterday by 5 p.m., and then you also got an additional handout at your dais of comments received since then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have something. I want to move that council supports the ballot measure extending the existing 0.2 open space sales and use tax.
Second.
It's been moved by myself, seconded by Councilor, who should I choose? McCoy. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. The motion is, to support the ballot measure extending the existing 0.2 open space tax. We're going to have it on the first reading, but this is just to support the council supporting it. And that passes 5-1 with Councilor Chris in opposition and Councilor Rodriguez absent. We're now at the city manager's report.
No report, Mayor, Council.
We don't have any special reports or presentations tonight. And so we're at first call, public invited to be heard. I would like to remind you that you have 3 minutes, and the first one on the list is Kat Bradley Bennett. Can you turn on the microphone? The top left, I think? Top right.
Oh, bottom right.
Thank
Just so
you,
everybody
Kat.
knows. And I just want to show you the shirt I'm wearing tonight. I'm a proud volunteer for Longmont Parks and Open Space, but years ago I was also a very proud member of the Boulder County Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee. At that time, Boulder County was first thinking about having an open space tax. And we had a county commissioner, Buzz Smith, known Republican, very, very conservative. And he stopped me in the parking lot one night after one of our POSAC meetings, and he said, I'm supporting this tax. And he said, I'm supporting this tax for this reason. Open space is good for the county. People come to the county, they want to live here, they enjoy our open space. So I am here to throw my 100% support into extending our 0.2% tax on open space. It is not too early to do it. I guarantee you that your open space and trails staff are already thinking that far ahead, if not farther. So I applaud your support, and let's get this one passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Sherry Malloy.
Sherry Malloy, 1632 Sherman Way. The open space tax extension, item 9E, should be adopted as presented in your packet. Staff has spent 2 months reviewing language and consulting legal to come up with what you have before you tonight. This is copied from the original open space measure voters passed in 2000 with 2 very small changes. One is a 7-word phrase adding the word extended and referencing the new ordinance numbers. The second change is deleting the paragraph speaking to the sunset date. There is absolutely no reason to suggest any other changes tonight. The current ordinance has worked for 24 years and will continue to do so when voters approve it. Should future councils determine this tax ordinance be revisited for any reason at any time, that can be done with 2 city council meetings. Tonight's theme is just do it. Respect the process and let the voters decide. Almost 1,100 residents and counting have signed the appeal asking you to let us vote on this. Over 80% of Longmont supported last fall's county open space tax extension. Lafayette voters extended their open space tax indefinitely with 82% approval. In the last 2 years across the state, 3 out of every 4 voters have voted for open space taxes in 10 ballot measures. The data demonstrating support says, just do it. The members of 4 Longmont advisory boards, Parks and Recreation, Water, Sustainability, and Transportation, all say just do it by unanimously endorsing this proposal. All city buildings, infrastructure, streets, pipes, and properties need ongoing funding for maintenance. Much of this comes out of the general fund. Just like owning a car or home, future exact costs for upkeep are unknown. What is known is that resources will be needed. Having a secure funding source for open space takes pressure off the general fund and allows for long-term planning. It makes sense to just do it. The photos in last week's Visit Longmont presentation was all open space and wildlife. Open space is not only something Longmont residents highly value, it's an economic driver. 2 of you have repeatedly questioned staff about future acquisitions, exact costs, language, suggested a superfluous survey, etc., and are likely to continue that vein tonight. Councilor Martin says she hears that people...
Sorry.
Spooky.
A little humor.
Okay. Councilor Martin says she hears that people want their taxes lowered, yet she fully supported a new Arts and Entertainment Center sales tax, which would have cost taxpayers 5 times as much as this small, not new tax. $1 on every $500 purchase for open space is a very tiny cost for such a rich amenity. Enough with throwing up hurdles. You've already voted 6-1 to put this on the November ballot, with only Councilor Christ voting no. Tonight you get to complete that. So please just do it and leave it to the voters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jamie Simo.
Jamie Simo, 517 Independence Drive. Mayor and City Council members, I am here tonight to ask you to approve the language for the ordinance that would put making Longmont's open space sales tax permanent on the ballot. I'm asking you to do so without changing the language staff has drafted. It is true that people don't tend to like taxes. However, this tax is not a new one, and it is minimal, just 2 cents on every $10 spent. We have over 1,000 signatures of people in the community that agree that such a minimal tax is a small price to pay for the future of our open space program, which everyone in Longmont benefits from. Certain council members have talked about trying to save taxpayers money by reducing the tax. They have also turned around and talked about the need to do the opposite and raise the tax. So which is it? Asking staff to rewrite the ordinance to lower or raise the tax is merely a way of derailing the effort to get this measure on the ballot. It is also disrespectful to the nearly 1,100 residents that have asked that the tax remain the same, but merely be extended in perpetuity. That is the measure they expect to be voting on in November. Raising or lowering the tax requires more research and analysis, which means this measure would be pushed back so that voters won't get the chance to decide on it in November. So again, I ask that you vote to approve the ordinance as written by your own highly knowledgeable staff. Any adjustments can be decided on at a future date when time can be allotted to the research and analysis such a move requires. Thank you.
Thank you. I have counted 11 signatures that people that have signed up to talk about item 12A or the airport. So I am not going to be calling your names. If you can talk about that at the August 27th second reading agenda. So the next person is Kevin Crania.
Yes, Kevin Crana, 1136 Purdue Drive. This is not an agenda item for tonight. This relates to a June 4th special session that you had. It's relating to a house right across the street from us, and Susie's well aware of it, 1129 Purdue. You kind of left us hanging, frankly, the neighborhood, after that session because you didn't address really any of our concerns. That house remains boarded up. If you drive down 9th between Fordham and Airport, you'll see it's boarded up. It's been almost a year and a half now. it was confusing during that June 4th session that you didn't know what our issues were. You weren't sure if it was before the condemnation or after. Well, it continues. It was before, during, and after. There are no restrictions on a homeowner, no restrictions on Aaron Babel, who owns that house, on what he's going to do with it. That could stay boarded up for 10 years. Longmont Housing Authority and the safety officer that you had here that night wasn't sure if housing values are affected by meth-contaminated houses. Yes, they are. In fact, across the board, across the country, there is a typical 6.5% reduction in home values when they're in the vicinity of a meth lab or a meth-contaminated house. We have at least 20 homes on Purdue Drive that have been affected by this house. The city of Longmont has no restrictions, no requirements in place for a meth house. Did you know that? You may have. I bet you the people behind me didn't. When is the city of Longmont going to put some regulations in place to keep this from happening? Because as of now, you really haven't accomplished that much, to be honest with you. There's notice. There was a question about notification on a house when it's contaminated. Do you know that piece of paper is 8.5 by 11, and it's about 50 feet away from the street, probably 8 or 10 font? Do you think anybody in their neighborhood walking by or driving by knows why that house is boarded up? I suspect not. Those signs need to be about the sign of a zoning sign, which is what, 24 by 18 or so? You need to let the public know what's going on. There is no Longmont list of condemned meth houses, and that needs to change as well. This gentleman who owns his house does not have a certificate of occupancy, yet he's there almost every other day storing his golf cart, goes over to Twin Peaks Golf Course so he can play golf. No certificate of occupancy, but yet he can store stuff in there and have access to it. That needs to change, as does the larger signs. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Nadine Lester.
Am I? Nadine Lester, 1517 Mayfield Lane here in Longmont. I'm a resident on Mayfield Lane, which is in Ward 2, and Marcia Martin is my council representative. And when I'm at a meeting at work, I have to have my camera on, and I'm a little puzzled that Marcia Martin, who is attending remotely, I don't know if there's a requirement or anything. Thank you. I think it's important to be present on camera when you're attending a meeting. It's pretty standard. Thank you, Council, for approving the resolution as written to put Longmont's open space sales tax on the ballot this November. Who cares about our publicly owned land? The people of Longmont do, and I am convinced that our neighbors really do want guaranteed funding for it. With a permanent tax, we can fund new land acquisitions and maintain the natural areas we have. Our city will be able to continue its outreach and educational programming at open space properties. Volunteers will find satisfying ways to act on their community spirit while appreciating the natural world. We know that when we protect the natural areas around Longmont, we also enhance our local economy. People want to live and work here because they appreciate the climate, the wildlife, and the geography. Visitors want to spend leisure time in our parks and money at local businesses. So a vote for open space will protect Longmont's economic future too. Open space is the best gift we can give generations to come. This is such a hopeful sign that we'll have this tax extension on our November ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Paul Minchin.
Thank you. Paul Mitchin, 1411 Terra Rosa Avenue. I'm a Longmont resident of about 24 years. That address I moved to about 8 years ago. It's a new neighborhood and infill that's a great place to have houses. It's right across from the service center, which I'm sure the council members are aware of. It's not as new as all the development out by Costco, which I think is a great place to put houses. It's not as new as at least 3 apartment complexes that have been put up on Main Street in the last few years. Not as new as the condos going down by Oscar Blues, also seems like a nice place. There's some new apartments down there across off of Pike. I think that's a great place for houses. Not as new as the brand new apartments that are being built by the Target. Those are also seems like a good place to put houses. Sometimes I like to take my dogs for walks around my neighborhood, and every now and then I like to take them out and park next to the end of the runway at the airport and walk along the green space there. I think the city has done a really nice job there. It's a nice place with a big open, there's a stream that runs by, there's a pavilion, it's all great. I support open space in Longmont. I think that's a great development or part of our open space. And when I park there, I see lots of families at the end of the runway watching the planes take off. I see a vibrant airport community, and I think that's great too. I think we've got a lot of developments in Longmont that are in the right place. I've heard about developing the sugar mill. That would also be a great place in the future. And I think the area often off of Boston Avenue would also be a great place for housing development.
Paul,
Yes.
be very careful where you're going here.
Yep. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Robert Morris.
Hi, my name is Robert Morris, 170 South Pratt Parkway. I'm just here to talk about something that I've spoken about before, and that's our brain injury support group that we have in Boulder County. And I just wanted to let you know that that will be held this week, this Thursday. If anybody and everyone is welcome to come to that. It's open to people who have survived traumatic brain injuries, people who have, and also people who are caregivers for those who have traumatic brain injuries. We don't advertise that we're going to fix anything for you. It's just a place for us to gather and speak about common issues. So we would welcome you to that. That once again takes place at 4747 Arapahoe Avenue in Boulder, Colorado, 80303. And the meetings generally last from 6 till 7. And like I stated before, this is the next meeting will be this Thursday on there. And that's all I really have. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Robert. Gary Hodges.
Good evening, Gary Hodges. Hi, Mayor, council members. In 1866, William Stanley Jevons wrote a book called The Coal Question. He observed that technological improvements that increased the efficiency of coal use actually led to the increased consumption of coal. This became known as the Jevons paradox. Governments of all sizes typically expect that energy efficiency gains will lower energy consumption, and instead they face this paradox. Efficiency is routinely offered in this forum as a tool to reduce energy use. On a per unit basis, that is true, but as Jevons realized 158 years ago, the end result is more energy use. So the next time someone stands here touting energy efficiency as a way to decrease energy use, you will know you're getting bad information, or bad information is being presented. So recently, Platte River Power Authority released the 215-page integrated resource plan. In it, we learned that construction of Black Hollow Solar, Colorado's largest PV plant to date, has begun. And fun fact, it's located inside Hale Alley. So on page 176 of the IRP, we find a helpful table laying out operational risks for this project that redirects us to another section, no matter. A quick search for Hale in the IRP produces exactly 0 occurrences. Should we call this bad or incomplete information? Regardless, policy is being made based on this report. So I recently became aware of a September 2018 review of Platte River's Zero Net Carbon Energy Study. It's this one right here. In the 17-page document, we find that using our coal-fired generator, Rawhide, through its useful life, 25 years or more from now, and waiting for other technologies to mature is actually a net benefit in CO2 emission. So imagine that, cheap electricity, and it's better for the environment as well. A year or so ago, Platte River gave a presentation here where the presenter stated, "We are only showing our most optimistic projections." So I agree, as many here stated a couple weeks ago, that Platte River is filled with talented people. So I ask myself, why is Hale left out of the IRP? Why do they focus on the most optimistic projections? Why do they repeatedly tout efficiency? So why is the IRP filled with caveats so large we could drive an electric-powered truck through? So I'm left to wonder why we're barreling down this path of electrification based on bad inputs and wildly optimistic projections. So making policy with inputs like this will lead to poor outcomes, and we see it already with the recent rate hikes in our power bill, with firm promises of more to come. So we know this to be true since we're now redirecting funding that was previously used to foster economic growth to instead go to those who need assistance with their electric bill. So that ends that, and I again remind you, tomorrow is this talk on hydrogen that I've invited you all to at my work. I work at NOAA, and you can talk to an expert there and see what they think about our city's plans with regard to hydrogen. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Steve Altschuler.
Steve Altschuler, 1555 Taylor Drive. I want to talk about the goal of City Council to stop having gas be available for new builds and any remodels. It's been well documented that even currently, electricity is 4 times more expensive than gas. Gas is incredibly clean. It's incredibly efficient. I've got a gas heater in my jacuzzi and it heats up in like 2 hours. When I was looking to buy a jacuzzi years ago, they said it would take about a day to heat it up with electric. And like I said earlier, electricity is actually 4 times more expensive than gas. So you have that huge cost that you're going to infringe on people and time. So I would ask you, what happens in the wintertime when it's 5 degrees, 10 degrees, wind chill factor of -5 or -10, and you're trying to heat your house with an electric furnace? It's not going to be able to keep up because it doesn't have that much power like gas does. So you're going to have people freezing all the time. You're going to have electric rates go up to $800 a month instead of $200 a month. And then people are going to say, well, I can't afford to live here because I can't pay my bills. And then the city's going to say, we have a solution. We've built hundreds and hundreds of low-income housing. Come live under our roof and we will take care of you. So to me, all of this doesn't sit very well. You're building hundreds of low-income housing. Prices are higher for everybody because of the in lieu fee that you charge the builders. So rents are higher, mortgages are higher, utility bills are getting higher. People can't afford to live in their own home or rent, and then the city provides them with low-income housing. I think it's all bass-ackwards, to put it nicely, and I think the city should not be in the housing industry, and you shouldn't be forcing people to use electric, which the city actually owns and makes a lot more money that way too. Just a few things to think about. Thank you.
Ron Stewart. There he is.
Madam Mayor and members of the council, my name is Ron Stewart and I live at 203 Western Sky Circle. And I just want to thank you for bringing forward the ordinance asking Longmont voters to permanently extend our open space tax. I think it's good for the program and it's good for the community. In my opinion, it's precisely what the voters should be provided: an opportunity to continue the tax in its current form and to extend it so that our open space is maintained in perpetuity. I also think you have the formula for success outlined in the ordinance. Proposing an extension that requests that the current tax be extended with the same program dimensions is definitely the way to go. That's what the resident advocates have requested, and that is what it takes to have that all-important ballot language with no increase in taxes shall the ordinance be approved. And as far as I've been able to follow, there's been really no indication of the need for anything other than the current rate and the current program parameters. So in my mind, the ordinance before you is a prescription for success. And as I pointed out, and also as Sherry pointed out when I was here previously, Boulder County's open space tax was extended on the ballot last year with the same kind of language. And in a year when other ballot issues involving taxes were getting thumped, it passed with flying colors. Not only in all of Boulder County, but here in Longmont. In fact, it passed in Longmont by a 72.5% to 27.5% margin. Roughly 24,700 Longmonters voted yes and 9,300 voted no. In this day and age, it's kind of hard to imagine that sort of consensus on an issue that a 72% indicates. It passed in every precinct within the city of Longmont. And I would just say, too, from historical perspective, Longmont open space taxes always do better in Longmont than Boulder County open space taxes do. It's just this open space is ours, so we're going to be a little more generous about it. So I urge you to move the ordinance forward for public hearing. I'm glad you voted to support it as a council, and I think we're headed in the right direction. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. Ron Renzel? Strider?
Thank you. Strider Benston, 951 17th Avenue. I just want to indicate that I totally support and agree with the open space. And one thing, if you notice, Longmont, you can find Longmont if you're in the air. All the other cities are pretty much all merged together. It's nothing but a light swamp. I mean, Denver all the way up to almost Greeley. And Longmont, you can actually see in between Longmont and Boulder and Berthoud and Loveland and Lyons and Points East. That matters. And I appreciate the dialogue tonight. Some points are well worth considering. I got a book today, The Pursuit of Happiness, How Classical Writers on Virtue Inspired the Lives of the Founders and Defined America. We are facing, one political group is trying to destroy everything our country existed or stands for, the democracy, the right to vote, human relations, and everything. Some of you know I joined the civil rights movement 60 years ago, and I hitchhiked to Selma, Alabama. I almost got killed on the way. I was on the bridge on Bloody Sunday. I got knocked out twice that day. I have spent my entire life standing up for the rights of democracy, which are now being actively attacked to destroy and eliminate one group in their country, to exterminate the concept, the Constitution, and the right to vote. I have put my whole life into that, and no one, including myself, thought that I would live to be able to be 21 and have the right to vote. Here I am 60 years later, and I'm still here, and I'm still trying. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Aaron Angel?
Hi, my name is Erin Angel, and I live at 1304 South Terry Street here in Longmont. And I'll keep it short because I'm glad you passed the open space ballot, putting it on the ballot measure, if I understand that right. But what I want to make sure is that nothing gets changed before it goes on. I want to make sure that you stick with that. Small town people, small city people don't like big city, big government politics that's underhanded. And if you changed a number on that and changed it so it made it a new tax, then it would go down and it would fail. And it would be kind of a sneaky, underhanded way to operate. And I will applaud you for being above board, and anybody who doesn't approve of it, just saying I don't approve of it. So, and that's just fine. Thanks, and have a great day, and keep supporting our open space. Hope to see you out there.
Thank you, Erin. Seeing no one else on the list, I will now end first call public invited to be heard. We are moving on to our consent agenda and introduction and reading by title of first reading ordinances. Dawn, would you read the consent agenda into the record?
Yes, Mayor. The second reading and public hearing for all ordinances introduced on this consent agenda will be held on August 27, 2024, except for ordinance 2024-54 regarding the Tower of Compassion Historic Landmark, and that public hearing will be held September 10th, 2024. Item 9A is ordinance 2024-53, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the city of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024. Item 9B is ordinance 2024-54, a bill for an ordinance designating the Tower of Compassion as a local historic landmark. Item 9C is ordinance 2024-55, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 9, Chapter 13.24, and Section 2.97.010 of the Longmont Municipal Code concerning prohibiting alleyway obstructions to ensure access to city services. 9D is ordinance 2024-56, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapters 14.32 and 4.78 of the Longmont Municipal Code on regulations governing electric service. 9E is ordinance 2024-57, a bill for an ordinance amending Title 4, Chapter 4.04 of the Longmont Municipal Code for extending the existing 0.2 cent open space sales and use taxes and referring said extension to a vote of the qualified electors. 9F is resolution 2024-49, a resolution of the Longmont City Council calling a special municipal election to be held on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024, as part of the coordinated election conducted by Boulder and Weld counties concerning extending the existing 0.2 cent open space sales and use taxes and approving an intergovernmental agreement between the city and Boulder County and an intergovernmental agreement between the city and Weld County for the conduct and administration of the 2024 coordinated election. 9G is Resolution 2024-50, a resolution of the Longmont City Council adopting and entering into the trust agreement for the Colorado Firefighter Heart, Cancer, and Behavioral Health Benefits Trust and taking other actions in connection therewith. 9H, Resolution 2024-51, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and the Federal Aviation Administration for a grant concerning perimeter fence construction at the Vance Brand Municipal Airport. 9I is Resolution 2024-52, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving a cooperative agreement between the city and the Longmont Professional Firefighters Association, International Association of Firefighters Local 1806 for January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2026. 9J has approved 3 capital improvement program amendments, and 9K has approved $30,868 from council contingency for Longmont Economic Development Partnership.
Thank you. Are there any counselors that want to pull items from the consent agenda? Counselor Christ.
Well, you know what I want to pull is 9E and 9F.
Okay. Counselor McCoy.
Mayor, how do we have to have a second on that?
No.
Okay, because I would prefer us not to pull those.
Well,
yeah,
they've already been pulled. So I'm going to move the consent agenda minus E and F. Can I have a second? It's been moved by myself, seconded by Counselor Yarbrough. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that carries 6-0 with Counselor Rodriguez absent. So we now have ordinances on the second reading and public hearings on any matter. The first one is A, 2024-52. It's a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024. Are there any questions from counselors on that ordinance? Now I'll open it up for public hearing on 2024-52. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this bill? Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing on 2024-52 and ask for a motion.
I'll move ordinance 2024-52. Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring and seconded by Councilor Christ. Let's vote. And that passes 6-0 with Councilor Rodriguez absent. That is the only one that we have on the second reading. So now we're going to go back to the first reading and the items removed from the consent agenda. I will turn it over to Councilor Christ for item E, 2024-57, and item F, 2024-49. Councilor Christ.
Yes. I see Miss Cassidy is making her way down here.
Okay.
Okay. So my concern with E is the extending it without the ability to renew it periodically. And I'll tell you why. We did the same thing with the transportation tax, and we often get complaints or concerns about how are we really spending that money. And then also we have we lose the flexibility somewhat about every periodic time maybe adjusting that tax, which came up on Saturday with our Coffee with Council. I think it was a couple Saturdays ago. So that's all my concerns about E. I'm really more concerned about F because what came through from the city clerk is that the cost of putting it on the ballot here with I'm just listening to the radio here. The cost of putting it on the ballot is almost 1.5 times what it normally would be, say, last election when we put something on the ballot. And it would be nice if we could wrap it into something like, say, in 2025 where we have 3 or 4 things on the ballot. And so I'm actually in favor of open space, but I guess I would like to know what particularly presses it to be on the ballot this November.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Christ. I would, in terms of putting it on the ballot currently, we don't have the security in our open space funding with the current sunset to do the long-term planning in our Parks and Natural Resources divisions around open space fund. So everything that we do, CIP planning, acquisition, purchases of land, of water, things we've talked about other times I've been up at the podium in recent weeks, restoration, all of those things involve long-term planning, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and without having an open space tax funded indefinitely or in perpetuity, we can't do that type of planning with certainty.
So what you're saying is that there are funds that you need to have available that extend beyond 10 years, beyond 2034, where you have to have the assurance of having those funds beyond 2034 in order to complete certain deals for land or water?
So let me jump into so there's a few things. One of the things that so how did this come forward? Obviously, the residents have brought this forward. Council directed staff to bring this forward, and asking staff this question. There's some pieces in there that we need to unpack. So one of the challenges that we've historically had with the open space tax is related to the fact that there is a sunset period, and looking at the ongoing dollars that are needed to maintain the ongoing operations within the open space fund. And so last time we talked about this is we purchased a lot of open space, but we haven't necessarily driven in the operating dollars associated with that open space. And so when we look at the budget we're dealing with now, there's other areas, parks and others, that are taking on some of that responsibility. So what this would give us the ability to do is push that responsibility back onto the open space fund on areas that were purchased. But when it's term limited, one of the things we don't want to do is to allocate ongoing positions that are needed for that operation and maintenance into a term limited structure, because what that does is at some point that may go away and you're still stuck with that operating deficit that you have to look at. So when council asked this question of me the last time, one of the things that I did talk about is when we look at where we're sitting in the budget right now and we look at the adjustments that are happening via property tax by the state legislature, it is important for us. Obviously, it's ultimately council's policy discretion in what they do, but I would say in going through this budget process, this is something that could help alleviate some of the budget challenges that we're seeing in terms of the ongoing funding structures that we've been dealing with over the last 2 weeks. What Danielle's talking about now is more of the capital acquisition piece, in the sense of you can't really plan for that acquisition as you're heading into that period of sunset because you're limited in terms of those dollar amounts. Is that fair?
Correct, but also other things the program does as well. Restoration, things that we want to be doing, long-term stewardship.
Well, it was interesting, this last primary. I've worked with Boulder County elections for maybe 15 different elections. This was before I was a candidate or before I was elected, for certain. But they have some really good algorithms. That's how they plan their needs, to conduct an election, especially a countywide election. And this last primary, their algorithm was off so much that they got about half as many ballots as they were expecting. It was sort of surprising, which I think tells us that elections are surprises sometimes. So we'll see what happens, but I just want to say that this takes almost $100,000 out of the budget for this, so I'm hoping that it is successful, and that's my biggest concern. All right, I will move item 9E. Do I have a second?
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Chris, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring to move 9E, 2024-57. Let's vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Martin, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I had some significant discussion after this. I was the one who raised some of the issues about whether this was the right thing to do with David Bell about the effects of fund accounting for hiring and for land use expenditures, and for the changes that have actually been advocated by the public about how we manage our open space, especially for things like, agricultural practices that we don't do very much right now, like carbon sequestration practices and so on, that is really enhancing land management. And with all those taken into account, extending the tax in perpetuity from a fund management standpoint does make sense to me. And so you'll notice I voted in favor of the resolution by council to approve, and I'm also going to vote in favor of this. I think that the arguments made were very good, that we shouldn't mess with it. So there's that.
Thank you, Councilor Martin. Let's vote. That passes 6-0 with Councilor Rodriguez absent. And now we will go to 9F.
9F. So I've basically discussed my issues with 9F too, and that's the cost to put it on the ballot. As you know, the thing is, if we can stack 3 or 4 things together, it doesn't cost as much per issue. It's just incremental instead of doubling or tripling. It seems like everyone's determined to have it done this time, and I've gotten some weird information from the county about what they think the election might look like. So I'm feeling more hopeful. It's true. It's true. And I just want to say I'm an equal opportunity econometrician, okay? I just work with the numbers here, and believe that is why I was elected to this council, was because I bring that skill set to this group. So anyway, I want to appreciate also Councillor Martin for always asking the mathematical questions and researching the graphs and charts and darts with me as well. All right, so I will move 9F. Thank you, sir.
9F was moved by Councillor Chris, seconded by Councillor McCoy. Let's vote. And that passes 6-0 with Councillor Rodriguez absent. We're now on to our general business portion of the agenda, 12A, 2024-58. It's a bill for an ordinance approving the concept plan amendment for a portion of the Schlegel-Williams annexation known as the Modern West 2 development, generally located south of Rogers Road and east of Airport Road. So we'll welcome Jennifer Hewitt-Apperson to the podium.
Mayor, while they are pulling that up, I will just remind the public that second reading and public hearing for this ordinance, if passed tonight, will be August 27th, 2024.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, members of the council. Jennifer Hewitt-Apperson, Principal Planner with Planning and Development Services. So this is the first reading of the ordinance for the proposed concept plan amendment for the property known as Modern West 2. So while staff presentations aren't necessarily typical for first readings, this project has complexity that warrants brief discussion and background at this stage. So just as an overview, this property consists of 27.25 acres that are located southeast of Vance Brand Airport. What is being proposed is a mixture of higher density residential and commercial uses, in addition to a greenway section that would be part of the city's primary greenway system. So proposed amendments to the airport influence overlay zone were discussed with council earlier this year. Staff recognizes the need to add specificity to this section of the land development code. However, development proposals currently, what's going on here? Currently under review are subject to the existing code requirements, though conditions may be imposed if warranted by the review criteria. FAA representatives did provide City of Longmont staff with Advisory Circular 5190-4B as guidance for decisions regarding land use compatibility with airports following the June 13th, 2023 letter from the Denver Airport's office. This circular is included as part of your packet, and staff has used this circular to guide recommendations regarding the current proposal as well as potential code amendments. Section 2.2 of this advisory circular states that there are 6 core characteristics or considerations to evaluate when assessing compatibility of a specific land use, including noise, airspace, visual atmospheric interference, wildlife attraction, various protection of people and property, and development density. In addition to assessing a land use against these base characteristics, state and local criteria need to be considered when addressing land use compatibility. Because the FAA has, and I'm emphasizing this, because the FAA has a limited regulatory role in land use planning, the local, regional, and state provisions will likely take precedence in local land use decision making. So additionally, section 2.3.1.3 of this circular includes techniques for mitigating airport impacts on residential uses, many of which the applicant has planned to incorporate in this proposal. Wait, hold on. What just happened? Sorry. Did I mess something up, Rogelio?
No, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, just checking. All right. So this particular map was included as part of staff's May 7th presentation to City Council regarding the proposed amendments to the AIO zone. This map and related amendments to the code, again, haven't yet been approved or brought forward for further consideration, though staff has used this as guidance to the applicant when reviewing the proposed concept plan amendment for Modern West 2. The areas labeled Zone A and Zone B, so the red and the yellow of what we lovingly refer to as the paddleboard, were delineated using parameters provided in the advisory circular provided by the FAA. I'd also like to note that the sample ordinance within this circular does state that single-family uses may be compatible in areas identified as Zone B, such as this yellow-orange area. But we don't recommend that any residential uses be permitted in that particular area unless they have already been approved by council or other decision-making bodies. So this particular map zooms into the portion of the proposed subzones where the proposed Modern West 2 development is located. Again, residential uses have previously been approved in the immediate area of Modern West 2 without opposition from the FAA, in particular Modern West 1, which is this basically right there, this little frying pan shaped property here. So this area has had a lot of development, pressures in recent years, I will say. And again, I'll just touch on, we're not doing the public hearing tonight, but just in terms of the proposed concept plan, the biggest thing I'll note is this line right here corresponds to the boundary area of what we have been calling Zone B, and no residential uses are proposed within that area. So decisions regarding development applications must be based upon the review criteria contained within Chapter 15.02 of the Land Development Code. I'd like to give you an overview of these review criteria ahead of the public hearing in 2 weeks. So there are 6 criteria for all application types that we consider. It doesn't matter what application it is, how large or how small. We apply them to all of them. There are 3 additional criteria for concept plans and concept plan amendments that are considered. The ultimate decision for whether criteria have been met is for City Council to make ultimately in terms of concept plans and plan amendments. Staff and Planning and Zoning Commissions make recommendations, but ultimately the decision comes down to this decision-making body. Additionally, the burden of proving compliance with these review criteria is the applicant's. So it is up to them to demonstrate to you that that they are satisfying the review criteria. Staff will make recommendations as far as our professional opinions on whether or not the review criteria have been satisfied. And again, we'll go into a more detailed discussion of the review criteria and specifically how they apply to this proposed development application at the August 27th public hearing. I'm just wanting to give you a quick high-level overview. In terms of the first 3, is the application consistent with adopted plans, codes, and regulations, including the concept plan or comprehensive plan, the zoning district, the zoning code, any previously approved plans, and does it apply with applicable statutes, codes, ordinances, and regulations? Does the application comply with applicable city standards, including for street and utility design, layout? Are the utilities available or will they be provided? Is the application compatible with surrounding properties in terms of land use, site and building layout, and access? Additionally, will the application adversely affect surrounding properties, the natural environment, existing or planned city transportation or utility services? And if so, or the other question is, if there are adverse impacts, will they be mitigated to the maximum feasible extent? The other question is whether the application complies with the sustainability evaluation system. This is not applicable for this particular application. It's not something that's applicable for most applications, frankly. And then whether or not there's an appropriate transportation plan that includes multimodal transportation access. Is it integrated with, adjacent development through street connections, sidewalks, trails, et cetera? So in addition to the previous 6 criteria, concept plans and concept plan amendments must also meet 3 additional review criteria. They're very similar to, some of them are similar to the previous 6, but the question is there appropriate land use, utility, and transportation design, including multimodal access? Are potential adverse impacts mitigated on surrounding properties, and are any potential environmental impacts mitigated? So those are the 9 things you'll ultimately be considering in terms of this particular proposal, is whether or not the proposed Modern West 2 development meets these criteria, either with or without conditions. So with that, I am going to turn the floor over to City Manager Dominguez and let him address some of the other issues we've been discussing.
So Mayor, Council, as you'll recall, I believe it was at the same May 7th meeting, Council asked staff a number of questions regarding FAA regulations and grant assurances and what that really means. As you know, this item was actually potentially scheduled on a previous meeting. Based on the questions that Council asked at the May 7th meeting, we felt that we needed to bring in our expert regarding the Federal Aviation Administration and grant assurances. So I'm going to turn this over shortly to Eric Pilsk. Eric is with Kaplan and Kirsch. Right now, you may recall we've worked with Eric on a previous Part 16 that we were working on with the FAA. So Eric is going to go over FAA grant assurances. He has a lot of experience dealing with these issues around the nation. And so we delayed it so we could tie in with Eric's schedule. He will be here not only at this meeting, but he'll be here at the next meeting as well. So, Eric.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor, Council. And really, the main reason I think from my presentation today is the 2 letters the city has received from the FAA and CDOT, threatening to essentially terminate the city's grant eligibility for airport grants to assist with funding airport improvement projects. I have to say it's unusual to see both state and federal airport regulators write such strong letters on an issue like this together, and I think that raises some of the concerns we wanted to share with you today. And given that, I wanted to give you some of the context and background on this issue, and of course answer any questions that you may have at this point. So let me start and set the stage. Jennifer did a good job of summarizing some of the specific factors that go into the concept of land use compatibility, but let me back up a little bit and talk more generally. When the city accepts grants from both the FAA and CDOT, they agree to comply with a number of conditions. Both of them have a condition that relates to land use compatibility around the airport. The FAA defines that or describes that obligation, states that the city will take appropriate action to the extent reasonable, including the adoption of zoning laws to restrict the use of land adjacent to or in the immediate vicinity of the airport to activities and purposes compatible with normal airport operations, including landing and takeoff of aircraft. It's a promise the city made to the FAA. CDOT has a very similarly worded obligation that's part of the grant agreement the city signed with CDOT. The key, one important thing is that the FAA looks at the reasonable actions by the airport owner. It's going to place a higher burden on airports with land use authority over the affected area, as opposed to airports that might butt up against another jurisdiction that has land use authority. Because in a case like Longmont, the city here has land use authority and can take action to actually prevent something from being developed that the FAA would deem incompatible. If it's happening in a neighboring jurisdiction, all the airport sponsor can do is sort of lobby against that or in favor of mitigation measures, mitigation measures, but can't take direct action itself. So the FAA sort of has a somewhat higher standard or burden on an airport sponsor that does have land use jurisdiction. And I think that's affecting what's happening with the letters here today, an important part of the background. The other aspect of this, well, then let me go more specifically. Jennifer listed 6 different factors that sort of comprise compatibility. Neither the CDOT or FAA has said specifically which of those is their concern. We can infer that it's the latter, which deals with development density in the area of the airport, because the project sponsor and staff have done a good job of assuring compliance with the other ones. So when the FAA talks about keeping development density, what they describe in the advisory circular is keeping density low near airports to avoid mass injuries in the event of a crash and provide as much clear space as possible for an aircraft to crash or land, in the event of an emergency where they lose control of the aircraft or have to come down in some somewhat controlled manner. Keep objects that may further damage the aircraft and injure the pilot out of the way, and keep as many people out of the way of such an incident. Another component that has been expressed is to keep populations low in areas that are more likely to generate more complaints and concerns about aircraft operations that will in turn put more pressure on the city sponsor, the airport sponsor, to restrict operations such as touch and goes and other operations that bother people. And that gets into the broader concept of compatibility. Would a concentration of people in that location be compatible with normal airport operations? So with those general standards, the real issue is that there's not a specific thing that I've seen articulated in those letters that says this is the problem with this development that the city can either address or decide that it can't be addressed, and then can make its decision. And the real problem with that is that the FAA has a huge amount of discretion here to make determinations of what it deems to be compatible and whether the city has done everything it can to prevent a use that the FAA deems to be incompatible. And the same would hold true for CDOT. So where does that leave the city? As Jennifer said, the developer working with staff have done a lot to try to mitigate the concerns or the effects of the project to try to make it as compatible as possible. Nonetheless, the most recent letters from the FAA and CDOT indicate that they still don't believe that the project as proposed is compatible. These are strong letters. I don't think that they were lightly written, and the city should take them seriously and assume that the FAA and CDOT will follow through. So what does that mean for the city? First, it means that on the FAA side, that the FAA and or airport users can initiate, there's a formal process referred to as Part 16, which we've been through in another context. But the purpose of the Part 16 process is to determine whether an airport is in compliance with its grant obligations, and if not, for the FAA to make a decision about whether to withdraw eligibility for future grants. And it's the process that has to be followed to withdraw grant eligibility, but the result of a ultimate negative finding in the process is the loss of grant eligibility. The whole process takes 2 or more years, depending on how many levels of appeal and how involved it gets. The FAA is likely to receive considerable deference in its decisions by the courts, notwithstanding recent Supreme Court decisions in this area where the agency has a great deal of expertise. They're going to receive a good degree of deference on whatever their decision is. And if their decision ultimately is that this project is not compatible, to affirm a finding of withdrawing the city's grant eligibility. Excuse me. The CDOT process is a little bit less clear, but I think the end result is the same, and there would have to be litigation to challenge any determination by CDOT withdrawing grant eligibility for funds. And at the end of all that litigation, if the FAA and or CDOT were to prevail, and assuming no other changes in the project and no agreement was reached, the city would no longer be able to receive CDOT or FAA grant funds for airport improvement projects. The city would not, however, be excused from meeting its obligations to fund the airport and to maintain the airport and keep it in a safe and serviceable condition, so it would face the decision of how to fund that shortfall. I think Harold and staff can speak more specifically about the dollars, but my understanding it's a significant portion of the airport's maintenance and improvement budget.
Yeah, so obviously, when we look at FAA grants, it's a significant portion of our budget. Any of the capital improvements that we perform at the airport are through different aviation grants. From a budgetary perspective, assuming that if they were to make that determination, when we look at the overall budgetary impact to the general fund, because it would be the general fund that would have to slide in and fill the gap. When we talk about the budgetary issues that we're dealing with now related to the adjustments on the property tax assessment and the budget that we're getting ready to prepare now, we don't know. We're hearing there may be a special session. We know there's some items on the ballot in February that if those continue moving forward will continue to strain the general fund in the budget we have in front of us. That would be a significant lift for us organizationally. We would have to make other decisions because at the end of the day, we still have to maintain safe operations of the airport. And that's really what Eric is getting at in this case of it's not a land use issue, but it's a budgetary issue related to compatibility.
So are you open for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. There is a connection here that I am not making. Planner Hewitt Apperson gave us the 6+ ABC criteria under which we must judge this appeal, if I understood her correctly. And I understand that our latitude is very narrow in terms of how we interpret those criteria. So we essentially have to decide that planning and zoning applied them incorrectly in approving this project. And then I heard the objections or the possible negative consequences of going against the CDOT and FAA letters that we received, which are indeed very strongly worded. But what I don't see, and in fact, I think we admitted that we don't know how the regulatory objections being raised from the state and the federal organizations relate to our criteria. So are we not being set up for in a situation where the council can't find any criteria for overturning this ruling because we have a mismatch between the objections and the criteria we are required by statute to apply?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeremy Terrell, Assistant City Attorney. I'm advising the Planning Development Services staff concerning this land use application. Councilmember Martin, those are great questions. Just to clarify, concerning concept plan amendments, Planning and Zoning Commission made a recommendation. City Council is the deciding body. So that means that City Council isn't determining whether or not Planning and Zoning is wrong. Planning and Zoning made a recommendation. City Council is deciding whether or not the criteria has been met. As to your specific question concerning the regulations, that comes down to council to interpret the criteria in our land development code. As Ms. Hewitt Apperson pointed out, the first criterion for all the application types is compliance with state, federal, local laws, rules, and regulations. It could be interpreted that the FAA regulations fall within that first criterion. So that's one thing that council have to consider back when this comes to them on August 27th.
Thank you very much. That's helpful.
You're welcome.
Councillor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Well, I was going to say the same thing because in the end here, we are the deciding body. And if we see that even if planning and zoning did follow the criteria, they're appointed body. But we also look at what the Airport Advisory Board recommended on this, and they're also a recommending body. They gave us input as well, and so, and I think that they recognize the positions of the FAA and CDOT, and understand how important that is. Now, I as a council member can't change if we've done stuff underneath the airport in the past, but I can make a difference now. And so, you know, that's where I feel that we need to focus on. You know, if mistakes were made where we should have probably not done, allowed something to move forward, then that's where we need to stand on this. If we are willing to continue to make those mistakes, then that's on the rest of the council. I don't plan on doing that.
Councillor Hidalgo Fearing.
Thank you, Mayor. So, you know, I'll be honest, my concerns are less monetary, sorry, Harold, around the grant assurances, as opposed to safety. So I have been in contact with residents near the airport, but not necessarily in what that paddle boat area is. And one thing that residents near and around the airport are noticing is more airport traffic. And so my concern then lies, if this higher density development gets built, what would be the impacts? And, you know, I've been in conversations with Levi as well. And, you know, one comment that he had said is really it's in looking at the recommendations on our own, what's the word I'm looking for? You know, in our own airport recommendations for pilots to fly in and around the area, that they have to, you know, they're really, it's pilot discretion based on comfortness, based on what's safe. So if we have a higher density development near the airport, you know, how many pilots then are going to feel safer kind of circling around and maybe going around towards lower density areas? My concern is impact to the residents who have already been there, as well as, you know, pilot safety for having a development in that area. You know, so I'm feeling more cautious around moving forward with this in regard to safety for pilots and residents in those areas, as well as activity for existing residents whom we serve. So it's not a question. It's a comment.
I have concerns. I've read everything that was presented in the packet, and my concerns go back 8 years in that. I think that when I got on council, there were a lot of issues with the airport that we've worked through, and it's taken a long time. I think that our city manager has done a great job, but my frustration comes from a little bit about Envision Longmont, in that we did not plan when we made this envision of what we want our city to look like, that there should be a buffer area for our airport. And that from my perspective, it should never have been zoned MOU. So we wouldn't be here now if it was zoned agriculture or commercial, knowing that we have plans for the airport. The airport master plan is pretty old. What I would like to do is focus on the airport, table this, which I know the developers aren't going to like. But what is our plan for this airport now that we've gone through the injuries there, the deaths there, the lawsuits, and we're starting to do the infrastructure? What is our plan? And council should know what that is. What is our master plan? What does our build out look like? And will that influence any development in the future? I think we're doing it kind of backwards, in that we're putting in development and then we're going to say, what do we want for our airport? What is the development going to look like around the airport for economical? We're going to have a restaurant, or we're going to have more leased hangars, which is going to be more traffic. whether it's for businesses around the airport, not necessarily to fly planes, but to work on chips or to work on airplanes. I don't know what that future looks like, but we need to look at that, I think, rather than go backwards and say, oh, I wish we didn't have those apartment buildings there. That's not a good idea. So those are just my thoughts. I would like us to look at the whole thing as a vision, this council, because that master plan is very old, and we don't know what they're thinking. So
I think the question is, what does a master plan say? And I think when we look at the master plan, many of the things that are in there that we've been working on in terms of getting utilities to the south side, there are components associated with how do we look at a terminal component to this. It's a bit of the chicken and the egg here, because in order to undertake those items, for example, I believe there's terminal funding potentially that we can get in terms of a grant. It's an FAA grant. And so it goes to the point that most of the revenue that you bring in to your airport, whether it's redoing the ramps, redoing the terminals, that is dependent on the FAA grants, obviously, where you have to have the match. And so when we look at the master plan, we need the FAA grants to come in order to do some of those things. And to your other question, in terms of the zoning in that area, it is mixed use employment, of which the primary use is commercial. The secondary use is residential. And I think that ties into the compatibility standards that we've been talking about.
thank you, Harold. And we have had those conversations, and I understand that, thank goodness we went through the past 6 years or so with what we had to go through with that airport, because we now can do the infrastructure. And I'm really thankful for that. So, Councillor McCoy.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I like where you're going with this. I think we have to maybe relook at that before we start on this. I'm sorry if somehow there was we did get a development in there before we looked at some of these things, but I think a master plan relook is exactly where we need to go. And I think that's probably the most appropriate way of dealing with this, and then really trying to figure out, is this going to be a compatible aspect of our municipal airport? And I'm always a little concerned about a slippery slope of putting housing underneath something that we know is upsets folks and gets them going. And to Mayor Pro Tem Hidalgo Farion's point, it is a safety issue right now. We need to start talking about those things, and it is a financial issue, and we need to make sure that we do this right, because it is for a certain part of the population a beloved institution, and if we're going to start throwing out our sacred cows, so to speak, what's next? So I think we need to at least look at this in a very serious and sincere way.
Councillor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I mean, I agree with everybody, but what you all said, but we shouldn't had staff to bring back the concept plan. I mean, honestly, if you knew that if you all felt like we should have been working on the airport by itself, that should have been first and foremost, then that's what motion we should have made, was let's concentrate on the airport and, making sure it's where the master plan, whatever it should be, because they spend a lot of time on this concept plan. I'm not saying that what you all are saying is wrong, but I do want to make sure that we take in consideration of those who have both have concerns and those who are also for this development as well. I too am concerned about the safety and also the letters from FAA. You know, if we can't have them to say, yes, this will be compatible and I think this will work, that is a concern. At the same time, we have talked about the development and everything. So for me, with this concept plan, us looking at it and saying, I mean, we did approve them to move forward with it. Am I right? I mean, no?
No, not really. And
I mean, to bring it back to show us after we had looked at the paddle and all of that. So I'm just making sure.
Well, this is a bit confusing because it is the chicken and the egg thing. That the idea and the plan to develop that area came to us long before the letters from CDOT and FAA. They're the ones that actually threw the wrench in it.
Okay.
And that is where we now have to look at it differently.
Right.
So,
So Mayor, if I may jump in.
Sure.
So I think, there were different conversations, and one was, I believe the May 5th was on the paddle.
Right.
And that was a separate conversation, but it was tangentially connected to this. Is that correct, Jennifer? This is the first step in the process. And so you still have the public hearing coming at the next meeting, where you have the full public hearing and you take the input in. So typically in this process, council will pass it, we move into the public hearing. Because this was so complicated, and especially in terms of the grant assurances, we wanted to have Jennifer do her presentation, Eric provide you with information. They will both be back as part of the public hearing as we continue to discuss this. But there is a second component to this, which is the public hearing on the 27th. And I just wanted to make sure that we reiterated that for you all.
So our options are to approve the Modern West 2 concept plan, approve it with conditions, or deny it. Those are our 3. So
I'm going to have Jeremy jump in and help you through this.
we do have a couple more people that would like to. Okay, you can wait. Okay, Councilor Christ.
I agree with you, Mayor, and I just want to offer my support that I think we should be looking at expanding the airport and supporting the initiatives there, and I think it's best to have a plan. So, appreciate your leadership in that regard.
Councilor McCoy.
Well, I was going to go down the path of council options.
Can we wait
but
until
I can
we
wait
have?
until he's done. Can I hold the
Yes,
floor?
sure. Go ahead.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Jeremy Terrell, Assistant City Attorney. The options listed in the staff report are for the next hearing on August 27th. At today's hearing, this is a first reading, but again, it's an unconventional first reading just because we wanted to have Ms. Hewitt-Apperson available tonight because she won't be available on the 27th. We'll have other planning development services staff present. We want to have our subject matter expert here to give the criterion, as well as Mr. Pills just to give the idea of the legal landscape we're looking at. So in terms of council's decision tonight is whether or not it should go to second reading public hearing. And council will then have the options in the staff report available to them at the second reading.
Okay. I'm sorry. I just read what was in the communication to us from staff. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor, I'll go there.
Okay. Thank you. So my question then is for you. So then at the next, if we decide to approve tonight to move to a public hearing, will there be more information available to us that we have not been privy to today?
Yes, Councilmember Hidalgo Faring. At the second reading, we'll have the applicant's presentation because as Ms. Hewitt-Apperson pointed out, it is the applicant's burden to show they meet the criteria. So the applicant will give their presentation, and will also have the public invited to be heard on the actual item. So if FAA or CDOT comes to the meeting, they're welcome to make their contributions heard, along with members of the public who are, I believe, someone here tonight and planning coming back to the next hearing as well.
Okay.
And we'll also have, again, Planning Development Services staff and Mr. Pilsk, myself, and our other aviation council present for questions as well.
Okay, so this would really, moving to a public hearing would really allow us and the public to get a full scope of the situation, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to clarify.
Councilor Yarbrough. Come on. Yes.
That's what I was trying to get to. Sorry. It takes me a few minutes to get, sometimes I go around the mulberry bush. But anyway, that's what I was trying to get to, was the whole reason why we agreed to even have it on the agenda or to move forward with it was so that we can get to August 27th and hear public invited to be heard, as our inboxes have been inundated with. Right. And so I think it is important to listen to our community and find out what it is that they want, and also to get more information for us, because we know that there are safety concerns. I want to hear the full picture myself before I make a decision on anything. And especially, I think we all are in agreement that the airport is number one, the renovation and making the airport a better, sustainable airport of the future, right? And so that was where I was trying to get to.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I interrupted. Mea culpa. Okay. Councilor Martin?
Yes, that I just wanted to add, in addition to the speakers at the public hearing, I don't see any slacking off of the letters and testimony from the public, written testimony that is being improperly sent to the council instead of to Ms. Hewitt-Apperson. And I don't know about anybody else. I've been trying to be good and send it on to her without reading it, because that would otherwise be an ex parte communication. But we're going to have a very fat packet to read when it finally comes to that. So I'd like to put in a word to the public to please send your letters directly to Principal Planner Jennifer Hewitt-Apperson and not to the council. Yeah, and but we're going to have a lot of information to process, and I do think that we need to follow the proper procedure that we've embarked on and do that. And if we then take an action that is unconventional about resetting the planning operation as a result of the public hearing, then that is one thing. But I don't think that that's a reason for not sending this on to the public hearing. Obviously, a lot of people are really invested in the public hearing, and so we should have it.
Councilor Christ.
Ms. Hewitt-Apperson, is the Modern West 1 development already under the paddle with the golden hatch marks?
It is. It is. There were some different assumptions when that project came through as far as where to site the residential uses. There was a narrower area, but that property ultimately was annexed back in 2019, and went through the development review process. The preliminary plat was approved in January of 2022 by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that particular property has basically has its development rights and is working through the process. But yes, they are. That proposed paddle area is a wider area than the assumptions that were used for the Modern West 1 project, which contemplated a very specific area within that was identified within the larger annexation area that this one is part of. So there were some very specific things that we'll be discussing in more detail as far as as far as the original Schlegel-Williams annexation, but there were a different set of assumptions being applied, and we did not receive the same commentary from FAA or CDOT or the airport that I've been able to find in our records.
Do you think that has to do with walling it in a little bit closer? Maybe the Modern West 2 is expected to give a greater area of relief than.
I really can't speak to that to that question. I will say that the Modern West 2 property did significant changes to their site plan in response to that Zone B of the paddleboard that our staff, our GIS staff, our engineering staff took a look at and looked at the dimensions that were provided in the advisory circular, and that's where that came from, was from that FAA advisory circular. So, we're kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah.
And Councilmember
Yeah.
Christ, if I may,
Yes.
I think I don't want to speak for the FAA or CDOT, but from my perspective, looking at what's been happening regionally and nationally, I think attitudes have changed about land use compatibility, partly in this area in particular in response to controversies at other airports that have kind of heightened attention and concern about land use compatibility near airports. And we've seen it in the recent HB 1385, I believe, that was passed by the Colorado Assembly last spring, and it's just general concern about development near airports and the compatibility. So I think this both reflects a different set of assumptions on the city planning part, but also on the FAA's part.
Thank you.
So Harold, what do you need from us tonight on this? A motion to move it forward to the second?
We need a motion to pass this item. How do you want it, Jeremy? Move it to a motion to move to second reading and public hearing.
I don't know.
Second.
She seconded it.
Do you? Oh, okay. All right. Councilor Yarbrough moved item 2024-58 to the public hearing, second reading and public hearing on August 27th. Is that correct? 27th?
27.
Yes.
Okay. And who seconded this? Councilmember Marcia Martin seconded that. Any more discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. I guess I'm a little frustrated because you say we're going to get more information on the second reading. I would like to have all the information before the second reading. I mean, I feel like this is a huge thing, and we just have a few minutes up here to.
You will get the full packet. The difference is that you're getting the public invited to be heard, and the public comment piece associated with this, and you'll have an actual presentation by the applicant, because again, they have to have the burden of proof on this. So all of the information will be in the packet, but then you will have the additional presentations that are involved in second reading, public hearing.
Okay.
I'm back and forth. I am back and forth. I have a concern. Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Yarbrough. I don't.
no.
No, go ahead. I'll go
That's me.
Ferry.
Yeah, sorry. So this isn't sitting right with me. I feel like we received half of the information, and some of the information is being held, and so I can't make an informed decision. I mean, that's kind of like, oh, we're going to get more from how come the applicant wasn't here tonight? I understand that is it procedural? I guess I wish that we would have had. it just doesn't feel right. So I'm kind of toggling back and forth with my decision.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So this is following the normal land development application process. I mean, I think the difference here is the public interest in this matter. But when we typically put a land development application approved by ordinance, it gets approved on consent on first reading. Second reading, we have both staff and applicant reports then, and we have the public hearing.
Okay, so I guess, you know, you're right. It has a lot more interest, public interest in regard to this. So I think that's why we're looking at it with
Right.
a keener
And-
eye. I think, yeah, I'm still kind of toggling back and forth.
And I think staff's approach, because of the public interest, was try to provide more information to council on first reading rather than just having it sit with the council communication on consent. And
I'm almost wondering if
you know.
that's it. And even looking at the council communication, where our council decisions, moving it forward, making a recommendation. So it felt like that was going to be what we were going to be discussing and making a decision on tonight.
right, those are
But that's actually for
typically
the second
reading
reading.
type
Okay.
options for council.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And for me, the division comes with, to me, it's two issues. It is the issue of FAA and CDOT and whether we should be doing a development there at all. And then the second half is the development itself. You know, it's more complicated than a normal second reading. So that's where I got a little confused, is that you have to look at it two different ways. And it's a bit challenging. So, has everybody voted? I don't. Yes.
I can't decide either.
It disappeared. So that passed to go to second reading with Councilor McCoy, Councilor Christ in oppositions. So it was 4-2 with Councilor Rodriguez absent. So we'll have a more confusing questions for you. Can't wait. So thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So the second reading on, the second item on general. Oh, of course, we do need a break. I can see half of the room leaving anyway. We are now on B of general business, the Resilient St. Vrain Project and flood map updates.
Take your conversations outside.
The break is over. Good night. So Jim Angstead, you are the one that is going to chair
Mayor,
this.
would you like me to read the title of that resolution?
The Resilient St. Vrain Project and flood map updates? Yeah, what is that?
So there's Resolution
Oh.
2024-53, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving a grant agreement with the Colorado Department of Public Safety, Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management to fund the Resilient St. Vrain Project, Hover Road Reach.
Thank you.
You bet.
So Monica Bordolini and Jim Angstead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor, City Council members, Jim Angstead, Director of Engineering Services. Tonight, we, in conjunction with Resolution 2024-53, we want to provide you an update of the Resilient St. Vrain project. So, if you remember, in September of 2013, the city was inundated with a rather devastating flood. And from that disaster, City Drew came forth with the Resilient St. Vrain Project, RSVP. That is the city's multi-year, multi-phase project to fully restore the St. Vrain Greenway Trail, improve the St. Vrain Creek Channel to protect people, property, and infrastructure from future flood risks. And we're completing that work in an environmentally sensitive way. The project extends from the St. Vrain Creek confluence with Boulder Creek at Sandstone Ranch. That's the downstream end east of town, and ends at Airport Road on the west of town. We undertook the project in basically two main reaches, the Sandstone Reach on the east side, and then the City Reach, which is the portion running through town. So the graphic on the screen is basically our graphic for the City Reach. And we've been working from east to west. So we've completed basically 4 reaches, sections of that channel, as well as 4 bridges. City Reaches 1, 2A, 2B, and the Isaac Walton 1 Reach, Main Street Bridge, South Pratt Parkway Bridge, the BNSF Railroad Bridge was also one of the components, bridges we done, and then Isaac Walton Phase 1. Currently, bridge under construction is the Boston Avenue Bridge. That is slated for completion. Hopefully, we're looking earliest tail end of this year for getting maybe the trail completed, but other work will take it into spring and maybe summer, which is landscaping and other items. Overall, the RSVP is, we can call it an award-winning project. It has received 2 APWA awards in 2018 and 2020. And with our main goal of reducing flood risk, we are, as the projects progress, we are working on updating the floodplain mapping. And Monica is going to provide more detail in the next presentation on overall flood mapping. But as we've completed our phases, we have undertaken what are called letter of map revisions, or LOMARs. So we've completed 2 of those as we've completed reaches 1 and 2. And then we will, as we work further up, there will be more LOMARs that will remove as the construction is completed, the water is maintained in the channel, we will undertake those LOMARs. So the next phase that we are looking to move forward on is the Isaac Walton Phase 2. That is the section from Boston Avenue to Sunset Street. We're calling it, saying it includes the replacement of the Boston Avenue Bridge because that phase is a public partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers through their 205 project, or 205 program. And so that program, for them to do that project, requires a city match. So we are able to utilize the Boston Avenue Bridge as the city match for that, and we are well overmatched on the requirement. It is currently in the public bidding phase. They're going to be going out to bid hopefully within the next few months. We have been working, one of the requirements for that is the city is responsible for all of the property acquisition, and we have recently just finalized it with several purchases and an agreement. And so that will be moving forward. And the graphic you can see is the pre-project conditions on the bottom part of that slide, and then in the upper end, the upper part of the slide is the future condition, which would be the widening of the channel and reestablishment of the trail. The next reach up, well, and as part of that, we would do Lomer number 3, which would take a significant portion of area out of the floodplain. Approximately, I think about 250 residents or structures is what we call them, will be removed from the floodplain. The next reach up is really what our focus is for tonight, is the Hover Road reach, which will be the next reach up. We are currently, and the graphic you see before you is the preferred alternative. We will get more information on that as we get into the design. We are currently procuring the services of a consultant for that work. We also have a new project manager for that project. So behind me, didn't want to sit at the table, is Erin Provo. Stand up, Erin. She is the new project manager who will be leading our city effort for the Hover Road Reach. So we anticipate moving forward with that very shortly, taking it to a 30% design effort, and the resolution in front of you, before you tonight, is part of the funding for that effort. We received through FEMA a grant of $1 million with a city match of $400,000 approximately to move forward with the design. Overall, on the overall RSVP project, we have a standing slide that shows the costs to date, along with the bridge work we have done. And what is really critical to note on the RSVP project is you don't do over $100 million worth of work by yourself. You have a number of partners. So we started the funding of this through $20 million storm bonds that were approved by our residents. We also partnered with FEMA through their Public Assistant Alternative Procedures program, which is a significant amount of dollars. The HUD Community Development Block Grant Disaster Relief, CDBGDR, was a partner as well. We also received funding through the governor for the Signature Flood Recovery Project. Again, I noted earlier, the Army Corps of Engineers. We also have $20 million in voter-approved storm bonds, which haven't been issued yet, simply because there's still hazard mitigation grant dollars out there. So we have been pursuing those, and we will know next spring when we receive 30% plans whether or not they will award us additional dollars for that. So that's kind of, we don't want to use the bonds until such time as we've worn out the opportunities for other grants. And we continue to look for other funding opportunities as well. And that leads us back to resolution 2024-53 for your action. So thank you.
Do I have any questions on this resolution 2024-53? And if not, can I have a motion? Councillor Hidalgo Fearing. Sorry.
So it's more of a comment in looking at this and seeing the process. what you all have been able to accomplish and grant, all the grant applications, and it's nothing short of a miracle. So thank you. We appreciate you. I really appreciate the work and effort that you all, and the expertise you bring to, for this project and seeing it through. It's amazing to go through areas that have been remedied, and so thank you. And I'd be happy to move resolution 2024-53.
It's been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Councilor McCoy. Let's vote. And I am voting verbally because I cannot get my screen to change. There we go. It just did. It says it's here we go. I don't know.
Just enlarge your Zoom, and you don't have to switch over.
I did enlarge it. Now I can't get it back. So mine's a yes. Where is it?
There you go.
Okay. So that vote is 6-0 with unanimous with, I'm sorry, this vote passes 6-0 with Councilor Rodriguez absent. Thank you. We are now at the second 2024-59. This is a bill for an ordinance adopting the 2024 flood insurance studies and the flood insurance rate maps and models for Weld and Boulder counties. The second reading and public hearing for this will be held on August 27th, 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Angstadt, Director of Engineering Services. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Monica Bordolini. She's a senior engineer with the Engineering Services Group, and she will dazzle you with information on the adoption of the final firms and models for Boulder and Weld County for our flood maps.
We really need some dazzlement, so.
Well, good evening, Mayor Peck and council members. Yes, I am your friendly floodplain administrator for the city of Longmont. So what we're going to discuss tonight are the adoption of the preliminary firm maps that we've been using for the last 5 years now. And it's finally come time to make them official. So I wanted to, first of all, point out that part of our jurisdiction is in Weld County. So we made a decision that the Weld County maps will stay with Weld County and Boulder County, and we'll do both of them. So we've had to look at maps in both counties. So, what?
Remember to speak into the mic.
Oh, thank you. I'm so loud. I mean, why would it matter? So the first thing I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of background about why we have to do this, what the purpose is, and how important it is. So we'll go through a really quick refresher on the National Flood Insurance Program, and we'll start with, we affectionately call it the NFIP. And Longmont has been a participant in the NFIP since 1977. So we've been NFIP community for a long time. Basically, what that means is that in exchange for access to flood insurance and grant money and emergency services, Longmont agreed back then, and still is, to enact floodplain regulations and enforce them, issue floodplain development permits, inspect all development that's in the floodplain, maintain records of floodplain development, assist in the preparation and revision of flood maps, which is what we're talking about tonight, and help residents figure out their situation and their risk and provide them whatever information they need to make their decisions. I also wanted to point out that the CRS program is part of the NFIP program. CRS is the community rating system. We are a Class 5 community. We've participated in that. It's a voluntary program and we've been participating in for nearly 30 years. And we are Class 5, which means we're able to provide a 25% discount on flood insurance policies for our residents. So every point is another 5%, or class change is another 5%. Premiums, I guess, is the right word, not policies, but the premiums. So to stay in good standing in the NFIP, the FEMA requires us to adopt these maps and make them official. And if we don't do it, we're sanctioned. And sanctioning includes no new flood insurance policies, and during disasters, we wouldn't be able to provide any monetary help or loans, small business loans, or even private ones. We would not be as eligible for federal grants. I don't know that we wouldn't be able to get any, but would be very much reduced. And the state requires us to be in good standing with the NFIP to also get grant money, which they usually administer the grant money through the state programs. Good. So that's a requirement of theirs. So a lot of good reasons to stay in the NFIP. So I thought I would go through a little bit, just really quickly, recent floodplain map history, since a lot of you of the council is new, since I presented on this way back in 2019. The map in 2012 looked like this, and the important thing to look at here is the blue. Blue is the 100-year floodplain, kind of see where it is. I put some orientation, some of the streets on there so you could orient yourselves. The blue, yes, like I said, is the 100-year. The orange is 500-year. And then if you can see that pink area up in the right-hand corner there, that's called the floodway. So what this means is that anyone that's in the blue is required to have flood insurance if they have a federally backed mortgage. So that's who is paying and is still paying to this day more are required to have flood insurance are those people that are in the blue now, that are in the blue on this map, because this is still the what we call effective map. So then we have the flood, and as you can see, this is the extent of the 2013 flood in this area. It's all the same area, much bigger than the blue. So there was, it was Governor Hickenlooper at the time, and he said, well, these floodplain maps are just really out of date. We got to do something about them. So he put money into the state budget to start to update them. And finally, in 2019, we got this map. And so a lot bigger blue area. The council adopted this as best available information back in 2019. So this is the map that we started with managing new development from. And I just wanted to point out this spot right here, which the talking podium is covering up. But what it shows is there was, in the first map, some overtopping of Highway 119 right near Costco, and everyone who was here at the time of the flood said that didn't happen. So we were able to appeal to FEMA and remove that. On the next map, which we received in 2023, which was called a revised preliminary firm. And if we could move the talking podium, we would see that there's no more overtopping of Highway 119 right there. So our appeal was approved, and just so you know, there were many, many, many appeals, and this is a county-wide map. So there were appeals on Left Hand Creek and on St. Vrain all over the county. So this was just one of many. That's part of why it took so long. So the Boulder County firms are going to go effective in October 24th. and Weld County is going to go effective in September. And why this is important and why I wanted to talk to you all about it is because this is when the requirements for flood insurance are going to change. So up till now, only the people that were in the blue on the 2012 map were required to buy flood insurance, to have flood insurance. Now, when these maps go effective, all those properties in the blue are going to be required to start paying flood insurance if they still have a mortgage or a federally backed mortgage. So then you want to ask me, which Jim covered a little bit, but I'll do a little more in depth. Well, what about RSVP revisions? That's the whole reason we're doing it, to reduce the floodplain. Well, all of those revisions were done on these preliminary firm maps that were not adopted yet. So we have to wait until the new maps are adopted, and then the revisions will occur after that, and they have to go through a FEMA process, and it's going to take a little while. So what you're looking at right here are the two LOMRs that have been approved, letters of map revision that have been approved for RSVP, and that's kind of what the floodplain is going to look like when they're official. And like I said, but they won't be official until the new maps are official, and then they have to sort of reissue these approved LOMRs, and then they also have to go through an appeal period. So it's going to take 5 or 6 months after the new maps before there's some relief for some of those people that were in the blue in the downtown area. And then I wanted to just show you real quick of what the map change will look like for the project, the levee project, the Army Corps of Engineers 205 program project. And that's the one with the levee, channel improvements, and as Jim said, the Boston Avenue Bridge. And if you can see that all the area north of the creek now is orange. So all of that blue area, once the revision from that project is accepted by FEMA, all of the north area will be out of the floodplain. So that's where that is going. So the takeaways is that flood insurance is required for any any structure that's in the 100-year floodplain that's habitable is really the term that we use. So it's, or something that you're going to insure. And so flood insurance is going to be required for for all those properties that are in the blue. A lot of those will be new, and it'll be a surprise, and hopefully we'll have enough information out there that that they know that it's coming. We've been talking about it for 5 years, so hopefully they won't be surprised. But you never know. People new are coming all the time. And I also just wanted to say that FEMA has a process in place for adopting all those letters of map revision that are hanging out there right now, but they don't give us a schedule. It's just going to be on a first time, or it's going to be not a first time, but the order that they came in to be revised. So there's still going to be a wait. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from counselors?
That's right.
Did you forget something?
I did want to say something. I didn't put this in my presentation, but I did send, this is my second year of producing this brochure. And it's part of the requirements for CRS and that I discussed earlier. And the plan is to send this out every year to those people who are in the 100-year floodplain, so are in the blue. And I sent this out to everybody that's in the new blue this year, and with some information in here about exactly what we just talked about. So hopefully they won't just throw it in the trash and they'll read it. But that was our first attempt at doing some outreach. And then we'll have some city line both next month and the month after, and we have some other posts and things like that planned for making
Great.
sure everybody knows and they won't be shocked. But you might get questions, so I wanted to make sure that you kind of knew what was going on.
Thank you. That's very, very good information.
Good.
And that's a lot of work, I know. So do we have any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation, and we need a motion to adopt this.
Yes, but don't they adopt it on the second reading? Oh, approve it to move to second reading, I guess.
Okay.
-59.
Second.
So it's been moved by Councilor McCoy, seconded by Councilor Chris to move 2024-59 to second reading. See any questions? That's what we need to do? Okay. Let's vote. That passes 6-0 with Councilor Rodriguez absent. Thank you very much. We are now at C, which are the proposed changes to section 14.32 relating to distributed energy resources, DER, interconnection standards, solar energy rates, renewable power purchase program, which is RPPP, and community solar. Hannah Mulroy. Hi, Hannah.
Sean, can you put your mic?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there it is.
Sure.
Okay, we're ready.
Mayor Peck, members of City Council, good evening. My name is Daryl Hahn. I'm the Electric Utility Director at LPC. I'm not going to take up too much of your time, so we have a lot of time for Hannah to talk. I'm just here to give a really brief overview, just to remind you of where we've been. As you know, we have a goal to achieve 100% renewable energy supply to our city from Platte River by the end of by 2030. So we're doing a series of studies and work right now to get us to that point. We talked about having a roadmap, and we've been making progress in getting AMI installed. We're over, I think, almost 60% of the meters have now been installed. We have completed our code and standards review, and that's one of the things that Hannah will be talking about tonight. As well as our interconnection and rate updates. And then, of course, as we look to the future, we'll be making DER, integrating DER into our system. Now, there were sort of three major topics that we discussed before. One were the interconnection standards. So we're going to be making some changes there, some recommended changes there, and Hannah will go into more detail again there. We're making some adjustments to our rates. We're looking at implementing a value of solar rate, so it'll more closely match the actual value that the utility gets from rooftop solar from private customers. And then we're making some recommendations to make changes to the renewable purchase power program as well. So those are kind of the three topics that we've already discussed before. And then Hannah will be talking about a new topic which relates to community solar.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, City and Council. Thanks for hanging out late to hear from us today. I'm Hannah Mulroy, Energy Portfolio Development Manager for City of Longmont, Longmont Power and Communications. I'm here today to pick back up on a conversation we ended back in April, which seems like a long time ago now. I had been here in April. We talked about that we're going to spend a summer of doing public engagement. We have done that public engagement. I'm here to return to you today to discuss what we heard, refresh you on some of the topics, and potentially receive direction from you all to prepare an ordinance related to the topics at hand. So briefly, I want to talk about just a little bit of a agenda for today. We're going to talk about the timeline, where we are, where we've been, the community outreach we have completed, staff recommendations, and then council opportunity for discussion and direction on those recommendations. Then we're going to talk a little bit about community solar as a bit of a separate topic, because it's the first time I'm talking to you about it, and then have discussion and direction on that topic so that you can choose to kind of parse those two out if you wish to. You've seen this before, but we're going through it again. We've had check marks as we go through. So we were at council retreat back in February, discussing this at kind of a high level along with DERs. We came here in April with review and recommendations. I have gone through my summer of public engagement that I talked about. We're here today for council direction. We'll return for ordinance approval. There'll be continued public engagement during this kind of period, which I'll get into a little bit what that looks like. Then we plan to do public education after the ordinance, if it would be adopted, and then with the plan for implementation to be January 1st, 2025, as previously discussed. After today, given budget being next month, the intention would be to return with ordinances in October, November, give or take, should you provide me direction. So here's some more check marks. So when I was here in April, told you we had a plan for robust public engagement. I have been to all the bodies that are in orange in the middle there. So we went to Sustainable Advisory Board, Sustainable Coalition, NGLA, ECAT, and SRL. We have developed a distributed energy cheat sheet for you all, and we've frequently asked question that I'm continuing to refine with Scott Roche from Communications. We plan, once we get direction, to do some social media, city talk, newspaper articles, kind of get the word out a little bit more about the proposed changes. We want a little more security and direction from council, but before we do so. And then in the bottom, you'll see the green boxes are another kind of outreach that I was hoping to do post direction, so I had some confidence to reach out to city licensed solar installers, anyone who's in the solar permitting process, electrical trade organizations, and existing RPPP participants. So essentially, existing solar customers saying you're getting a legacy rate if that's the way we go. People in the permitting process, our intention would be to let them know that they should complete their permits and get permission to operate prior to the end of the year. We are anticipating an increase of workload and kind of prepared for that if we kind of got a little rush of applications. All the solar and trade associations, kind of just let them know about the proposed changes. And then for the existing RPP participants would be to let them know about the rate being changed effective January 1st. You've seen some version of these slides before. I've tried to simplify it a little bit because we've discussed it a couple times. So I'm going to show you kind of our interconnection goals and recommendations, and I'll have another one for solar rates and RPPP. Essentially, on the left is the shortcomings we've identified. On the right is the solutions to those shortcomings that we're hoping to receive direction on. So we hope to enable DERs while safeguarding our grid. So we would like to increase our system size from 120% of annual consumption to 200% of annual consumption, or what we're calling a reference system size of 12 kW. That's the system size needed to serve a typical single-family home in Longmont. So we kind of have that base mark 12 kW. We're essentially not going to give you too hard of a time about your consumption. That's the kind of easy pass-through permitting perspective. We want to encourage electrification, both beneficial building electrification and transportation electrification. So we want to adopt provisions to allow for those in system sizing. So if somebody bought a heat pump, they want an EV. Currently, we don't have something that lets you oversize your system for that anticipated load. It is something I would like to stop telling people no on, that we'd like to be more friendly about. It's not as common as one might think, but we do get certain customers. We just bought the house. I bought an EV. I have a Rivian. We want a heat pump, and there's just no consumption to prove that they need that bigger system. We want to be reasonable and need the code to support that, essentially. And then lastly, we want to modernize standards. So I've talked previously, our system, our standards currently only address solar generation, not battery storage. So that's one thing. We also need to modernize it in just of what we're requiring, the communications protocols, the UL listings, kind of just a lot of specifications that don't currently exist in our code. We just kind of want to bring ourselves to 2024 with that. Any questions on interconnection goals or recommendations?
I don't see any.
Next, I'm going to talk quickly about, I know we're switching a little bit, but on one of the biggest topics that came up when we were at council back in April was about our value of solar, and solar rates was one of our recommendations to council was that we adopt a legacy rate for existing customers. One piece of information, one piece of feedback we heard from you and a couple other people along the way was that 20 years seemed to be a little generous. So Brian McGill, who's somewhere behind me, Brian and I from Rates did an assessment of what we thought might be a reasonable legacy rate to try and ensure the investment of the existing solar customers. So a couple things. One is that more than 75% of our systems have come online in the last 5 years, so since 2019. Not totally surprising, but kind of assuming most systems are 5 years or less. The average payback in Longmont is between 11 and 19 years. It's quite a difference. It could be higher or lower than that. The variables of why payback isn't easy for us to estimate as it changes based on your home size, how energy efficient your home is, your energy use, just habits and personality and types of things, electrification, and then ultimately, honestly, one of the biggest things I found in my best practice was cash versus financing. So if you're paying 7% interest, takes you about 5 years more in what I saw to pay it back. So that's another consideration. So kind of looking at that, we thought, okay, 15 years would capture most people's, payback of 11 to 19 years, the lifespan of 20 years, kind of trying to cover that and be reasonable. But I also asked Brian to look at what the financial implications were of that subsidy. So what would it cost us over 10 years versus 15 years versus 20 years? So that's the bar you'll see here in the middle.
Okay.
Any questions on any of that?
Looks pretty straightforward to me.
Okay. So similarly, I have kind of the shortcomings and recommendations, solar rates goals. So we want to safeguard our existing solar customers' investments. So we're recommending instituting a 15-year legacy rate for existing customers. We want to properly reflect the value of local generation while minimizing the cross-customer or cross-class subsidization. So we want to implementing a value of solar rate, 18% over wholesale. We've discussed previously, I'll mention it again just verbally, that's 15% premium for local environmental benefits, so reduced pollutants, greenhouse gas emissions reductions, so on and so forth, and a 3% benefit for line losses. So we're not paying for 3% of line loss. So that's 15, it's 3, 18%. That's based on quite a lot of best practice research on our part. And lastly, we wanted to reevaluate the renewable power purchase program rate to more accurately reflect the cost of renewables coming from Platte River now that Tariff 7, not now, but with Tariff 7 being eliminated. Previously, we had estimated a 60% reduction, and we've actually readjusted it for 2024 numbers, and it's gone up to a 66% reduction in that rate. So dropping the premium that folks pay to participate in that program. Any other questions? I think we're going into discussion now.
Seeing none.
So with that being said, before we get onto community solar, I've kind of split it into 3 things to give council. I'm not a parliamentarian, so I'm not exactly sure how you're going to vote on this, but going through the 3, giving direction on direction to modernize interconnection standards, direction to seek through the 15-year legacy rate plus the 18% value of solar, and then direction to adjust that RPPP by 66% as discussed. I don't know if you can motion on all of them. If you can't, discussion, how you want to proceed.
Councillor Christ. Oops, I'm sorry.
Hannah, after a customer has completed their 15-year legacy rate, then do they drop to the value of solar?
Correct.
Okay.
So the code as written is that in January 1st, 2040, everyone that's on the legacy rate would move over to the value of solar rate. Or the applicable, thank you, the applicable self-generation rate come 2040. I'll say that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Any other questions?
Councillor Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Is it possible to move adoption of all 3?
Yes.
Because if it is, I do.
Thank you.
So I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Councillor Martin, did you say you moved all 3?
I said, if it's possible, I move all 3.
Okay. Do we have a second? I'll second that. It's been moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by myself that we move all 3, and because I don't have that screen up anymore, All three, hold on. All three options for, I'm sorry, that we move the proposed changes to section 14.32 relating to distributed DER interconnection standards to all three of them.
Perfect.
Staff recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's vote. I want to thank you for this. Also, I'm sorry, this passes with 6-0 with Councilor Rodriguez absent.
Thank you.
Are you going to do the community?
Yeah, I am. I'm going to take a moment to go to community solar if that works for you all.
Great.
All right.
That's what I
If
was
can do this
hoping
without
for.
breaking what he has gotten set up. I need to share, right? Again, share. That one. Share. Sorry, I'm not used to Zoom. There we go. And then you said Control L. Is that the fancy? Hey, I learned something tonight. There we go. All right. So while I'm here talking to you all, I think I've mentioned in the past previously to some of you at council or individually the city's pursuit of community solar as an option to increase access for folks who can't do rooftop solar as one of what we're saying many ways of pathways to participation in renewable energy in the city. I was tasked 2 years ago when I started with LPC to spend some time looking into community solar. That has all come to a head now, and we're ready to start launching things. Really excited. But I'll be honest and say I had a moment of, I need to make a code change related to this. I should tag that on to these other code changes we're making. So I'm bringing this to you today as a bit of an addendum to the others so that if you generally support kind of a program idea, it's a pretty minor change I need to make, but then I can bring everything back come
Great.
October, November.
Okay.
So just trying to streamline things. I've been doing code amendments for a little over a decade, so I'm getting you good at it over time. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the community solar program. So this is a demonstration project. I want that to be clear. We want to start kind of small and build it able to be scaled. So it's a limited subscription. The intention would be a limited subscription through a lottery system. It would be an opt-in program. We plan to start with 30 to 50 subscribers based on kind of the average home use in 2025. So start enrolling folks, have people getting the credit or premium, I'll explain in a second, in early 2025. And the program's designed to scale to serve more. So the way that we've designed it is this bit of a financially self-sustaining program so that if this is successful, folks are interested, we can turn around and build a larger system with the same program design. So it's built to be scalable. We're starting with a 200 kW system, which again will serve about 35 to 50 subscribers based on their usage. And it's going to be hosted at the RNG facility or the Waste Services facility at 100 South 10 Martin Street. It's a partnership between us and Waste Services. So LPC and Waste Services have come together. They are generously offered to host the community solar at their property. They will not be off taking from it. It will go solely to community solar.
Great.
Any questions on that initial part before I get into how the program will work?
Councilor McCoy.
It's not a question, it's a comment. I just absolutely love this. I often thought about, people having solar on their houses when we have a wind or a snow or a hail event or something like that damages them. Then we have them offline. And with this, a city employee is making sure that if that happens, they get fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm much more supportive of this and thinking that this is really the trend than to just put it on your house and then when it for some reason or another you have a problem, then it falls off and now you're really out.
Right. LPC would be doing asset management, maintenance, and so forth. So absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other comments before I move on to the...
Yes, along with Councilor McCoy's comment, it is also good for the lower income because it's very expensive to put solar on your house. So we don't want to have somewhat of a caste system in our city. Everybody should be able to.
And some folks even that live in condos or
Yes.
attached homes, and even if they can't afford it, they can't do it per their HOA. So that's part of what we're trying to address here is both what we'd say like market rate folks that can't get rooftop solar as well as income qualified folks, which I'll get into in a moment here, how we're designed to serve both.
Great.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, Councilor Yarbrough.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. I just have a comment.
I'm really happy to see this because when I was in Japan, up in the mountainous towns, solar panels everywhere up in the mountains. So that, that provided, that energy and everything for the whole community, those small towns. I thought that was so cool. Like every town we went through, I was like, wow.
I know. Am I doing that?
So I just think we're on the right track because if they're doing it there in utilizing solar panels everywhere within smaller communities than Longmont, then I can only imagine how we'll benefit from it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Just one more slide, and then we'll go to the discussion direction. I just want to talk to you a little about the program design. I've, again, spent about 2 years. A couple of my colleagues are here with me who've been helping, Eliana Lands, particularly as our program integrator, has been super pivotal in developing this program. So there's been a robust program design. We've worked with the National Renewable Energy Lab through their partnership with the Department of Energy, National Community Solar Partnership, NCSP, American Public Power Association. They have specific municipal utility community solar resources. So they've been, I'll just give a shout out, really, really helpful, been doing technical assistance with them. And then we also brought together a local technical assistance group back in January. Can't believe it's been that long, of kind of everyone in the Front Range and some of the West Slope communities who've done community solar, kind of brought everyone together, talked about what they did, and then talked about what we plan to do, got feedback on our proposed program design. So it was really exciting. Holy Cross specifically, I'll give a shout out to because they were really, really helpful. So really, really robust program. And then we anticipate to get 50% Inflation Reduction Act direct pay for this. So 30% is the base bonus pay. And then we, I have my circle on the wrong one. It was on the one above until I made the graphic bigger. It's actually supposed to be in the 20% low income community. So because the intention of the program is to serve 50% low income folks, we're qualified for an additional 20%. So that's a 50% direct pay. We anticipate to be reinvested in the future solar projects. And the program is designed to be revenue neutral, slightly positive over the 25-year lifespan of the program and the system. I feel like I didn't talk about the middle part here. I just realized is the core part of it is it's designed that there's a 20% discount provided on so the energy portion of a low income residents' bills, so their per kWh consumption would be a 20% discount on their energy, and there'd be 50% of the enrollees are going to be what we call market rate or premium participants who pay a 20% premium. It's essentially a pass-through subsidy, very clear in the marketing that is part of what's happening. It's been a really successful model elsewhere in the country, and it really helps make sure we achieve that 20% bill reduction for income qualified, which A, is required to receive the bonus credit from the IRS, but B, is also just best practice nationwide that you want to achieve at least a 20% discount. So I kind of skipped over that. Sorry, that's a fundamental part of the program. And that's it. I just wanted to give you kind of a heads up. Again, there's a minor kind of discount premium language that needs to be built into the residential energy rate, which is what I'm here asking for direction to kind of prepare for that. So with that, unless there's any questions, what I'm seeking direction from council to do is to adopt it per ordinance to be prepared a community solar discount / premium.
I'll move that we adopt a community solar discount premium.
Second.
Any questions?
I'll take them.
So that's been seconded by Hidalgo, Faring, Martin, Chris, by everybody.
I'll take it.
Okay.
All right.
Any discussion? Let's vote. I don't see any discussion. And I think that you want another motion for bringing back codes.
I think that this is it. So the first three is to bring back codes. This is a done to bring back a code related to this.
Fantastic. This is very exciting.
Good.
Thank you for all your work.
Of course. I was going to go back to Zoom, but I can't quite figure out how to do it. So thank you all.
Okay, how do I get back here? This. Okay, we are now at the final call. Public invited to be heard. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak?
John Grunsfeld. I have my business at 229 Airport Road. I had 3 minutes of comments, but I think I can do it in 30 seconds, which is I just want to thank the City Council and also Harold Dominguez. I moved my business to Longmont because it looked like a nice place. And the longer I'm here, the more I love it. And I'm really impressed. This is my first full city council meeting, at, the members of the council, and that your ability to frame the discussions in terms of the Longmont economy, conservation, sustainability, protecting public safety, and I'm a big advocate for open space, as many of you know, also solar power, and I thought the airport discussion was really well reasoned. So thank you very much. Thank you for your service. I really do love Longmont. Thanks.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, great way to end. Is there anyone else in the public? Seeing no one, I'm going to close final call, public invited to be heard, and go to mayor and council comments. Councilor Christ.
I just have a question about the Coffee with Council on August 24th. I'm wondering if Councilor Martin is able to participate remotely since she's on the schedule for that.
I am planning to be in Longmont.
Marcia, we can't really hear you.
Oh, I don't know what's changed, but I am planning to be in Longmont.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Great.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will go to city manager remarks.
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Thank you. City attorney?
No comments, Mayor?
Great.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilor McCoy to adjourn, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. All those in favor? Let's vote. Aye.
Good night, Marcia.
Good night, Marcia. See you next time.